People of the internet, today we have a documentary about Joe Rogan's entire world collapsing before our eyes. And Ghost Comes, documentary called The Collapse of the Joe Rogan Verse. So get ready, because here we go.
In the mid-2010s, Joe Rogan was the face of podcasting, and he arguably still is today. But what people tend to forget is that by trade, Rogan is a comedian first. Through his meteoric rise in comedy, Rogan has brought some of his personal friends up with him, and some of them might just be the most unfunny comedians ever to get famous.
What the f*** is Mexican cookie? What are you talking about? It's like a chocolate chip with salsa all over it? What are you talking about?
Comedians and citizens like us both claim he has done irreparable damage.
Isn't like Mexican cookies would be like bizcochitos, stuff like that, you know, made with a lot of lard. Ugh. Not a big fan.
To stand-up comedy. There's only 1,000 real comedians out there. Thank them.
There's maybe 1,000 comedians on Earth worth of fuck.
I think even 1,000.
No, I don't.
500.
It's more neurosurgeons than there are stand-ups.
Is that true? That can't be true.
Guarantee it's true.
By giving a massive platform to these guys, Rogan...
Give it up for Shane Gillis for calling that one bullshit. Shane always does. I would like to see Joe Rogan outside of his studio with Shane, and then Shane just mop the floor with him.
Can turn them into household comic names. And much like Rogan himself, these guys aren't really known for their stand-up, but known for their podcasts.
Listen, for me as a fan, you know, I'd love to see you fight John Africa in France.
Who the hell is John Africa?
Originally, these guys were confined to the Rogan bubble. They'd go on his podcast, have memorable moments, and boost their careers, but one day, Rogan left Los Angeles, moving to Austin, Texas. Think of this as the revelations of the Joe Rogan OG comedy sphere. When Rogan moved to Texas, all these guys left his orbit somewhat, as almost all of them have stayed in Los Angeles, meaning they were without their safety net. Some of these guys are still close with Rogan, while others are so bad that Rogan has actively tried to distance himself from them in recent years.
Look, Brendan's my boy, but he needs a handler. Yeah. He needs someone like me around him all the time. What are you gonna do? No. Here's why. Yeah. And he'll go, yeah, you're right.
So let's talk.
Look, I just want to tell you the LA comedy scene is booming since Rogan left. The LA comedy scene is booming. So if you want to go do comedy, go to LA or go to New York. Don't go to Austin. If you get into the comedy mothership, that will be the beginning of your comedy career getting destroyed. You must not go to the mothership. It is the place where comics go to die. You know that. You know, no, I'm not going to go there.
Talk about everyone in the Rogan verse and how almost all of their careers have taken a nosedive after they left. This is the collapse of the Rogan verse. We'll also talk a bit about Joe and how he's changed, for better or for worse. I've also made individual videos on some of these people, so if you're interested in seeing more of them, they'll all be linked below. So let's start off with my personal least favorite comedian ever, Bert Kreischer.
I'm supposed to destroy it. You get it in my hand. You're making me.
Oh, looking at Tom, right? How he lost all the weight. We were talking about how he has like no muscle, and you're just like, how can you work out for 2 years and not be chiseled? Like, he's constantly talked about how he works out. He's got a trainer. How is that guy not chiseled after 2 years? And then it all became clear. Sources are out there saying that Tom Segura was on the Ozempic train. And it would make sense because some of the things that they say, I don't know, I'm no doctor, but they say Ozempic is bad for your muscles. And it also causes a deterioration in muscle. And that makes complete sense. You know, you could just see that Tom wouldn't do the hard work. Just like his comedy special, just like his shit show Bad Thoughts. It just all makes sense.
The fun. Bert Kreischer was one of those Joe Rogan go-to comedian friends back in the day. After all, he was named the ultimate party animal at FSU in his 6th year of university. He's what you get when you take a frat guy, cryogenically freeze him for 30 years, give him a microphone, and then release him to the public. His main brand of comedy isn't really jokes, it's more stories that probably definitely didn't happen, if that's your thing. Bert got so big, he literally made a movie based on one of his stories, which did horribly, and on a personal level, for a story story that's so insane, the movie is weirdly boring, but anyways, he's also known for being one of the most unhealthy comedians ever.
Do you think that you're an alcoholic?
No, I've run it through the ringer a few times. Dr. Drew's my litmus.
Oh, yeah.
And I've talked to him about it. He's like, you're not an alcoholic. You just drink too much. I drank a lot yesterday, and I woke up in the middle of the night in a fucking sizzle. I mean, I was so hot, and all of a sudden my body went and fucking poured sweat. Back to sleep.
The point where his fans speculate if he's actively on death's door. We're not talking Artie Lang, but I mean, just look at this guy.
Dang, I saw a picture of Artie Lang yesterday and his nose. What happened, man? I didn't even want to, I was like, how the fuck does your nose get, like, it is crazy. If you've not seen Artie Lang's nose, it is like next level.
Fans attribute this to his excessive drinking, and even more drinking.
It's 5:30. I woke up at 10, started drinking at noon, and my first beer was 3 beers in 8 seconds. I'm pretty fucked up. I've had 4 shots. I'm still drinking cold beers. I'm in the pool trying to get my feet to unswell, and we just got my wedding ring off my hand because it was hurting. Today's the best Tuesday I've ever had in my entire life.
His first appearance on JRE was on episode 73, and since he's been on Joe Rogan's podcast over 20 times. Most famously, Bert was a part of Sober October, a challenge between Joe, Bert, Tom, and Ari to see if they could go a month without drinking. Now, naturally, for somebody like Bert, who probably consumes more alcohol than water, this would be interesting to see what would happen. They do this challenge for 4 years, and it was super popular with the fans, particularly because you got to see how an in-denial alcoholic copes with abstaining from booze.
5K drunk one time and beat half of the fucking field.
That's a far crawl. Doug Stanhope and Chaley?
Me and Matt Foltron, we thought it was a pub crawl.
Oh, that's right. You told me about
and
that.
But I beat half of the fucking field. Now,
But just
those,
so you know,
those
but
are the same people.
But the pub
that would
crawl,
run
you
a
gotta
marathon.
stop and take a drink.
It was an actual 5K that I thought was a pub crawl, so I drank 5 beers before it, thinking we would be getting
the whole
buzzed.
time, yeah.
And it was a fucking 5K, and I beat half the fucking people.
The appeal of Bert on these shows was that he was a goofball that acted as a dummy for all the other contestants to feel better about themselves, particularly Joe. He was also completely delusional about his athletic ability because for some reason they added athletics into this competition.
When you say you're in good shape,
yes,
literally the shape of you is bad.
Now, fans of the show will look back to these clips as some fond memories, but make no mistake, Bert was a product of Rogan. Sure, he had stuff beforehand, but Rogan really blew him up to the fame he has now. After Rogan moved to Texas, naturally, Bert went out on his own and arguably had the most success out of anyone on this list, apart from someone we're going to mention later. He had
Here's the thing about Bert. Like, he may be a complete alcoholic fuck up, but he messed himself up into gajillions of dollars. This guy, who cares? Bert can just be done, and he's made a ton of money. It's crazy how many stupid people are out there. It is actually insane how many stupid people are out there and pay for it. But you know, a lot of things exist. A lot of things exist that just don't make sense. But it's okay. I got to give Bert credit when credit is due. He done rolled into a ton of money, and you can't hate on it. You can't deny it. He's making more money than all the comedians, like the guy said. It's true.
Multiple successful podcasts, was selling out arenas, and even had his own fucking movie. But with this success, people got to see who Bert really was.
It's so funny. A comic's brain is so different than a pedestrian's brain. And like what, like I can't help. I went
Pedestrian is so funny, by the way.
Oh.
Like saying that. We're not in the fucking armed force. Let's fucking relax.
There's a lot of people that overuse that
They really
civilian.
do. It's like we are fucking so lucky we get to do this bullshit.
An egomaniac.
You know what? Sometimes I've been on the fence about Stavi, but the things I've been hearing about him lately, I like that. This whole thing where they call everybody else civilians. Come on now. You know that ain't true. You ain't special. You ain't even done a good special. I just hate when people do that. It's just so weird. People just want to make themselves better than everybody. We're all the same. Some have better opportunities, bigger bank accounts, but we're all the same. We're all just trying to survive.
Maniac who can't help but make every single thing about himself. Somebody who interrupts.
I think it would turn around.
For Tom. No.
For Gar.
No, he's right.
I'll tell you why.
Hang on. I'm gonna be. You guys
Why
are
can't
all.
you let him talk for a second?
Fakes his laugh.
No, you can't do it now! You couldn't do it then! That's why it's funny!
You couldn't do it then.
Lies, and not in a way to make stories funnier. I know every comedian does that, but to make himself look cooler.
When we went to Canada for the first time, you're not allowed to bring drugs into Canada, obviously.
Did you bring drugs into Canada?
I brought a little bit of drugs into Canada. And the guy comes in and he goes, you guys are all good. And I was like, oh, thank God. So as we're walking to the bus, I'm still a little buzzed and I'm feeling loose. And I go, hey man, just out of curiosity, like what would have happened if we had brought drugs into Canada? And he goes, you mean hypothetically, like say someone had a glass one-hitter in their bathroom, shattered it, tried to throw it in the toilet and didn't flush it? And immediately everyone looks at me and I'm like, yeah, like that. And he go, I'd say it's an honor meeting the machine. Enjoy your tour in Canada.
Rogan has since distanced himself from Bert recently, changing the Sober October crew to Protect Our Parks, which Bert is totally not bitter about.
Yeah.
Ari, as a member of both Sober October and Protect Your Parks.
Oh yeah, you're the only one.
Protect our parks,
You're the only one.
Please have some respect.
You're the only
Put
one.
respect in their name.
What's that?
Put respect on their name.
We've never watched an episode. We refuse to.
Okay.
We just think it's kind of ridiculous that we got replaced.
Bert has also made a habit of posting pictures of himself crying on Instagram, so that's how his life's going. It seems that nowadays Bert's stories have gotten more and more insane, and by insane I mean unbelievable, as he apparently gets recognized everywhere he goes, all the time.
Everyone at the bar watched this happen. Everyone at the bar was like, what the fuck? I walked away. This is what upset me the most, is that she was, and someone goes, do you know who you just did that to? And they go, who? She goes, that's Bert Kreischer. Then she Googles me, and then she's got her own narrative, because he was a total asshole.
I was
a total asshole. Yeah. All the good stuff I did, none of that counts, because she gets to tell her story. I was so angry.
Do you think though that when the part where she goes, "You make me uncomfortable," it's probably when you were like, "He's just went to the bathroom. He's going to be right here."
I didn't even say it like that, Tommy. I swear to God, my energy was like, what? Like more confused. Like
so was it that you got loud? You did something.
I didn't get loud at all.
She just.
What was happening was dudes were recognizing me, and they were and she was like, I think the energy changed in the bar when I showed up.
It seems that now he's out of the spotlight, he can't deal with it anymore. He can't deal with not being famous.
How much of your life is lived to get Joe Rogan to say, "I'm finally proud of you"?
Unlike another person on Rogan.
Whoa, I don't like Ari at all, but dang, that is a burn. Oh, that is a burn.
Who never really wanted to be in the spotlight but ended up in it anyway, Joey Diaz. Now there are tons of channels talking about comedians, specifically Joe Rogan versus comedians, but you'll rarely hear anybody bring up Joey Diaz, which might seem strange because Joey was one of the people closest to Joe. I'd say Joey Diaz was a funnier version of Bert Kreischer, where the comedy didn't come from jokes per se, but from stories, except the punchline was never, and then this guy said, "I love your comedy," and everyone clapped and it was the coolest guy ever. The punchline of Joey's material was more about how much of a degenerate he used to be.
Anyway,
you really eat boogers?
Listen, from time to time.
Oh, Jesus
when you do
Christ.
coke for 30 years, it's a habit. You wake up in the morning, pick one out. It's like a fucking candy cane with coke on it.
You see, Joey was born in Cuba under Castro.
Fellers, I'm gonna give you a pro tip here. If that's your your lifestyle, I'll give you a pro tip. Before you go to bed, at the end of your night, neti pot each nostril until you can get most everything out of there. You will wake up and you will not have the runs. It's a pro tip. It's just a pro tip. It'll change your life if this is what you're doing.
Grew up poor in New York City, is a former coke addict and felon. While in prison, he'd learn how to do stand-up to pass the time. After getting out of the can, he'd get clean and focus on stand-up full time, where he'd end up doing some big clubs, being cast in movies.
You want to get to him, you got to go through me.
And most importantly, working with Joe Rogan. Joey, much like everyone else on this list, was a frequent guest on JRE, except instead of annoying the audience, he'd make them laugh. A huge reason why Joe and Joey got along so well was because weed was a massive part of their persona. They had plenty of conversations on the podcast that are some of my most memorable moments in JRE history, where they're either baked out of their minds or talking about getting baked out of their minds.
We just kept smoking.
We just fucking smoked because it didn't do shit to me.
What?
You got to break out the yay weed when I come up here, dog.
What are you talking about?
Right, that weed we just smoked. Don't do shit to me. If you make me drive 40 minutes up, you got to get me stoned, bro. That Susquehanna weed, I've been telling you about that shit. Yeah, you brought that shit to the ice house too. That shit don't do nothing to you.
Joey even used to do a Periscope live stream. Remember Periscope? Where he'd smoke weed on live stream and give morning motivation. While in the orbit of Rogan, Joey...
What happened to Periscope? Periscope was pretty cool back in the day because you could, live stream and stuff. What happened to that? Is it just that all these other companies came and they just didn't survive? I remember that. I remember doing that for some, using it for news things. It was pretty cool.
He created a podcast called The Church of What's Happening Now, which was like any other podcast, I'd say, except with Joey, there was this feeling of authenticity. A guy who didn't let the fame go to his head, who just wanted to be a normal dude doing stand-up comedy. That's what made his podcast so appealing.
Yo soy hijo la santísima caridad del cobre y te estoy diciendo que le tiene que meter leña. Yo te estoy diciendo que le tiene que meter galletazo.
Like he'd start the podcast and just play random music to get the audience hyped up. He'd even hire a producer to help him run the show, Lee Syatt. Now, calling this man a producer is doing him a bit of a disservice. He's more of a guinea pig because Joey would give him superhuman doses of weed edibles.
Look at him. Look at him. The Joey Diaz co-star in The Church of What's Happening Now is completely asleep at the wheel.
Bro, I remember one time, I was probably in my 20s, and I ate some of these edibles from the store, and I ate too much, and it was so intense I couldn't feel my legs. I couldn't feel my legs. It was so crazy. I'll never forget that. I was talking to my friend. I can't feel my legs. I literally couldn't move them for a few seconds. Man. And that stuff, dude, I don't like getting that high. When you get that high, you get paranoid or you pass out. The first time I actually got high, I was all at my friend's house, and they've all been smoking weed for a long time. And I smoked some weed, and we were all watching South Park, and I just passed out. I straight passed out. And they were all like, come on, get up. And I couldn't. All I wanted to do was sleep. It was so strong. I just wanted to sleep. Well, maybe it wasn't so strong, but it was the first time. And I just wanted to sleep. They literally had to drag me out of there.
He's on the show, and his eyes are almost totally closed. There's barely a slit. Look at him.
Yeah, he can't take him no more. He can't take him no more.
High.
On the show, it was pretty normal for Joey and Lee to eat weed while recording. The average dose for a weed edible is usually around 5 milligrams to 10 milligrams of cannabis. Anything over 25 is considered a heavy dose. But Joey's not an average guy. He'd take Stars of Death, which had so much THC in them, they're illegal now.
But just in case you want to see the devil, then we got the 200 milligram Stars of Death. 3 of these, you become a Nazi right off the fucking.
Remember, 25 milligrams is considered heavy. These had 200 milligrams of THC. He would eat them like they're Starburst. The most I've heard him claim was 10, so 2,000 milligrams of THC, aka weed. But Joey wouldn't just take these alone. He'd give them to his producer. The guy whose job is to run the show, who had only tried weed a few times before working for Joey. You can imagine how this went.
Dragging your kid down the dark cave. What's up, buddy?
That's fucked up.
What's going on, buddy? You all right over there? You all right over there? You want to go outside and get some air?
Okay. Get your back on the brains.
Lee is fucked up for you people who are not watching this
dude,
live.
I remember one time we
Now, after Rogan left Los Angeles, Joey Diaz up and left too, as he claims he was never really an LA guy. He moved to New Jersey, where he'd start a new podcast called Uncle Joey's Joint. Lee would guest star on this show, but wasn't associated officially with it until very recently. Joey brought back the Church of What's Happening Now with Lee on full-time, to the joy of the fans. It seems the fans like Lee more than any celebrity guest Joey's brought on. I'd say Joey's one of the few to come out of the Rogan verse in a pretty good state. Sure, he isn't doing the numbers like he used to, but that happens to literally anyone who does stuff online for an extended period of time. He lives a simpler, out of the spotlight life. But that's the weird thing. People don't really remember Joey as much as they do the other people. But there is somebody in the Rogan verse who is never forgotten for all the wrong reasons.
If aliens are real, why don't they just land on the White House lawn?
Oh, well, when you go fishing, do you check in with the president of the lake?
A theme you'll notice with many of the Roganites is that upon Joe leaving Los Angeles, their career...
Did he just call them the Roganites? I've said that before. I like that. That's a good... We got to make that stick. Just keep saying the Roganites. It is but the Roganites that have destroyed comedy.
Didn't go too well because travel can be an absolute nightmare. Let me tell you a story. One time I was driving from Canada to the US and back, so I bought an eSIM from some random app I found. When I arrived back in Canada, this eSIM app destroyed not only the eSIM I paid for, but it converted my physical SIM card to an eSIM and destroyed that as well. So on the way back, I had my phone in SOS mode the entire time. I said never again. So the next time I went to America, I used my roaming data and it cost me over $50 for 3 days. This is where today's sponsor, Saley, comes in. Saley is an eSIM company that you can set up before you travel. So when you arrive at the airport, you don't have to waste your time stressing about trying to find public Wi-Fi or going to a cell phone kiosk with a massive lineup before you do anything else. As soon as you land, you'll have access to Maps, Uber, and whatever else you need. The beauty of Saley is once you install their eSIM, you never have to reinstall it, no matter what country you go to, because Saley covers a couple hundred countries and regions around the globe. It's super convenient, just like this QR code on screen that you can use to get Saley with a 15% discount if you use my code GHOSTGUM at checkout. And take it from me, if I had used Saley before, I would have saved a lot of money, but also a lot of stress and time. Recently, my mom and sister went to Spain and they were comparing Saley prices to other eSIMs, and no joke, Saley was cheaper than all of the other ones they looked at. So if you want an affordable eSIM, scan the QR code or use the link in the description to get Saley. Make sure to use my code GHOSTGUM at checkout for 15% off. You know him, you love him, Brendan Schaub.
Why would he ever just take something off the shelf at GNC?
Well, we're not giving the guy kudos because he's the smartest tool in the shed.
Sharpest.
Sharpest. What I say. Dude, you know who I wish was my dad? And I've never met him before, and he's hands down the nicest comedian I've ever met in my life.
Hold on.
Yeah, it is a double oxy, isn't it? Can't swim.
Double entendre.
An absolute legend.
I've flip-flopped on Brendan Schaub, like wanting to see him come back. This and that, I thought the car thing, I think I'm at the point, it's the same thing with Bert Kreischer. I'm just like, you know what? You could give these guys as much credit as you'd like, but at the end of the day, they are just content to ruin everything. And you just got to let them. You can't do anything about it. I know a lot of people want to save people, want to try and tell people how they should live their life, but you can't. You can't. It just does not work. So at this point, I'm just kind of like I'm over it. These guys, it is what it is. And you can't get mad about it. It just is what it is.
On this channel, he basically is responsible for my success on YouTube, and that's because he is perhaps one of the funniest comedians ever, but not in the way he intended to be. Brendan Schaub is unanimously the most mocked comedian of all time, and it's not even close. Videos talking about his escapades outside of comedy get millions of views. There have been entire communities dedicated to making fun of him, entire YouTube channels built off making fun of him, and a podcast which only exists to discuss Brendan Schaub. But what could be so interesting? This is the enigma with Brendan Schaub. Why is he so fascinating? How do you explain it to someone who's never heard of him before? Well, Brendan Schaub has done a lot of things, including being caught lying so many times it's hard to count.
But I got a 31 on my ACT.
Poker.
You play really?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd brag like in a 31 on ACT.
No, that's
pretty good.
31 is good.
31's really good. Any 30 or higher is really good.
Yeah, Brendan doesn't know what's good.
36.
I got a 32.
No, you did.
I swear on my life I had a 32.
On an ACT?
On ACT.
You can't say 31 is bad and 32 is
I think
Releasing the worst stand-up special of all time. Twice. Wasted thousands of dollars on lawsuits against YouTubers only to lose them.
And it's gone.
Went on the record saying the lives of his haters don't matter. The same way homeless people's lives don't matter, or cat lives don't matter.
I view those people the same I'd view a homeless guy critiquing my art or critiquing my set or critiquing a podcast. They do not matter.
Got caught trying to cheat on his wife multiple times, had his ex-handler and podcast assistant come out and prove he was an alcoholic addicted to Adderall, has claimed a great conspiracy that comedian Bobby Lee was the mastermind behind the people who made fun of him online after trying to fuck Bobby's girlfriend.
Hey, will you clear bullying meaning?
Look, Kalila was probably trying to get down too. Kalila is known to not be a good lady, you know? And as far as Brendan Schaub's health, to his credit, he's in great shape right now. You know, you got to give him what he did. He's probably in better shape than everybody else except Joe Rogan. So maybe he is changing a little bit as far as his health and getting off of the drugs. You know, you could do drugs through your 20s, a little bit through your 30s, but if you're in your 40s, you might as well just give up. You might as well just give up. It just doesn't go. It's not like when you were young and they were really fun. It's a different thing. It occupies too much of your time. It isolates you. It's heavier on your system. So you got to give Brendan Schaub a little bit of credit for his health there, because he's looking good. He's in shape. He's in great shape.
Define bullying for me. Like what? Like,
if you want an entire lore of Brendan, I've made 2 whole videos chronicling almost everything that went down with him. But what about since then? What has Brendan been up to? Well, Brendan has been somewhat quiet, which is what I predicted, but he isn't fully gone. He's officially retired from stand-up comedy to be a dad?
And I just gotta be home, man. I got to. I can't miss Tigers games. Can't miss my Bosty growing up. Baby girl. I'm freaking tired. You know, I've been hustling for over 12 years now.
Listen, if you think your job is hard, you got to work 5-6 days a week, long hours. Just think, it could be worse. You could have to podcast a couple times a week. Brendan
was in comedian.
Oh, hold on. Sorry. Whoop. Sorry. Listen. You got to give Brendan Schaub some credit. If he wants to be a dad, you cannot hate on that. If he wants to be a dad, you can't hate on that.
Miss my Bosty growing up.
Look, we could all say he's making up excuses, but there's a lot of dads that aren't there. There's a lot of dads. A lot of those comedians are choosing to go to the club, hang out, get drunk, smoke cigars, weed, you know, doing all the other things in the green room at the mothership. And this guy is choosing to be a dad. He was all, people were streaming his kids' baseball games to watch and make fun. And I'm never going to hate on a guy that decides to spend more time with your kid. You cannot, because if you are a dad or a mother, the most important thing on earth should be your children, hands down. You brought them here, you should raise them. And I'm not gonna hate. I'm not gonna hate on Schaub for that. I know everybody wants to think, yeah, we already know he's a failed comedian, but you gotta give him some credit for spending time with his kids. More time, not a bad thing.
Baby girl, I'm freaking tired. You know, I've been hustling for over 12 years now.
Listen, if you think your job is hard, you got to work 5-6 days a week, long hours. Just think, it could be worse. You could have to podcast a couple times a week. Brendan says that it's his beast of a work ethic on why he's so successful.
People say Africa like it's a country. I do it too all the time.
Africa is a country.
That's a big continent.
It's a continent, though, yeah.
So, like, Egyptians are technically African, and Moroccans are. Everybody's claiming Africa, but it's a whole.
Africa could be so many different places.
Yeah, but it's like I'm American, but I'm from fucking Denver.
But let's be honest, it was just right place, right time, as he is the most featured guest on Rogan ever. He's basically tried everything since Rogan left LA, including, as of recently, starting a car channel. Despite not being an expert on cars, the most memorable thing to come out of this was him trying to stunt drive his truck and flipping it.
Starting emergency call to the SOS service provided by the manufacturer. To cancel, press the SOS or cancel button.
As of late, his
Yo, he didn't even have a seatbelt on? Bro, that's crazy. I remember my friend had one of those VW bugs, but it was kitted out. I don't know what it is. It's one of those sand buggies or whatever, and it's made for like racing on the dirt and the sand. It had the angled tires. and we had a similar situation, and I didn't have my seatbelt on, and he took a turn like that really fast, and we rolled, and he had like a handlebar thing right on the dash, and I remember grabbing that thing, and we were just rolling. I think we rolled 3 times, and I just held on for dear life because I didn't have a seatbelt, and like put my legs against the ground, and I was like, when are we gonna stop? When are we going to stop? Funny thing is it cracked the windshield, and he just pushed the windshield out, and we flipped that thing back over, and we drove back, and I watched him get his ass chewed by his dad, because, when rich kids get cars, well, yeah.
Podcast, The Fighter and the Kid, has not been doing too well, but to be fair, it hasn't been doing well for years. Now, someone familiar with YouTube payouts might look at these numbers and say, well, it doesn't look too bad, but in reality, Brendan isn't exactly the best with money. This money would do good for a solo channel with maybe 1 or 2 employees. Brendan has to pay his 3 co-hosts for 2 different podcasts, as well as all the employees he has for some reason.
You can reach Antarctica by foot,
I don't
so that's
think
the
this
thing.
is walking distance.
You can reach Antarctica by foot.
He also has to pay for an entire studio in one of the most expensive locations in the entire country. Has to pay off his $4 million home and has to keep up his lifestyle of fast cars, luxury clothes, and Adderall. But this luxury LA Calabasas lifestyle might be coming to an end soon. Recently,
we got to clear some of that. He's not doing Adderall. I don't think he's doing Adderall anymore. Yeah, you just can't say that. And he also, I think he sold that house as well. So I mean, he's making some improvement. I'm all about people making improvements, right? If I wasn't, then look at me. How can I say anything? I was a walking failure, and people gave me chances. So, if you're going to make videos like this, you should be correct about it. He's talked about not doing, and I don't think he's on Adderall. He would not be in the gym if he was on Adderall. He would not be working out. He would not be able to bench 225. He would be incredibly skinny and preoccupied with everything else. So I don't think he is.
His main business partner and co-host, Brian Callen, has dropped some hints that he might be leaving Brendan in The Fighter and the Kid. The biggest of these is Brian moving to Austin, Texas, attempting to relive the glory days of Joe Rogan, where both him and Brendan were thriving. But this wasn't really pitched as, we're both gonna go. It was more, I have to move for work. And every time they start talking about the future of the podcast, Brian is visibly uncomfortable.
Mutual friend of ours apparently talked the other day. Talked to him today and he goes, man, yeah, I talked to Brian. So, how long you guys think you do Fighting the Kid? Like, what? He goes, yeah, clearly you guys don't like doing it. He goes, really? I go, yeah. He goes, oh, I just figured the vibe, after talking to Brian, and talking to you, I went, oh, you're so off, dude.
And it's going.
Isn't that weird, though?
It's going to go strong.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you're so
people
off.
People get different ideas.
Yeah. Weird, right? Weird takeaway.
To see who it is.
Yeah.
Brian Callen's a pussy. I hate that. Even though Brendan Schaub is who he is, look, they're both looking down. That means they're both lying. They're lying to themselves. And Brian Callen should be a man and tell the truth. It's just, come on, man. Don't, hey.
Yeah,
Now, Brendan wasn't invited to Texas, as many suspect Callen was, but he's just going because Brian is going, despite Rogan telling him to hold down the fort in LA. Brendan's also listed his house for sale at a reduced price, so needless to say, things aren't going great in the Boppaverse.
It drives me nuts.
But that can't really be said for his co-host and what used to be the biggest punching bag in the Fighter and the Kid universe other than Brendan, Brian Callen. Now, I'm not sure what's worse, being Brendan Schaub or being the guy who has to depend on Brendan Schaub for his income. Brian Callen is a pretty OG comedian who'd done a ton of work back in the day, with arguably his biggest achievement being on Mad TV. His biggest Rogan-verse achievement was pretending to be a tough guy and embarrassing himself on a podcast.
He was looking.
You know what happened to me? I got bullied for a full year, and it turned me into a fucking, if somebody tried to bully me, I'll show up at your fucking house and kill you. That's what happens. I get so angry.
I'm not buying that even remotely.
I hate it.
Hey,
That's
bro,
not true.
You fucking bully me.
If I
you know
bully
you
you,
try bullying me right now, motherfucker.
You know what your problem is?
Hold on, let me handle this.
Here's your problem. You've talked to too many guys that let you say shit like that, and then it becomes like vernacular.
I mean, it's
I agree with Rogan. There's a lot of people on the internet that do that. They think they're all tough guys, and then you gotta they get a reality check. Look, you don't have to be a tough guy. There's just no point. There's no point. Who cares? Who cares? This thing where I'm badder than you, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? You know? I only talk shit about fighting. I would fight Joe Rogan because it'd be really fun. Like in a jiu-jitsu match. But it's only to create a little drama. The whole tough guy thing, that's something for your 20s. People getting in street fights, that's stuff for your 20s. You just kind of got to grow out of it.
Bad when Brendan looks like a genius. However, unlike Schaub, Callan had some serious comedy clout at one point. But when looking into Callan, what's interesting about him, Brendan Schaub, Tom Segura, Bert Kreischer, and Chris D'Elia, they all grew up filthy rich. Brian grew up the son of an international banker, living in a bunch of different countries before settling in the USA. Now you notice about all these guys who grew up very rich, they're all the most insufferable ones on this list, whereas the ones who grew up more humbly are the most well-liked by fans. Callan, at the height of Rogan, started a podcast with Brendan Schaub called The Fighter and the Kid, with Brendan being the fighter and Callan being the middle-aged kid. It held a much similar style to Rogan's podcast and had a ton of success. But looking back, it's clearly not because of Brian and Brendan. It was because of the funny group moments they've had. Unlike Schaub, who has like a billion podcasts and different shows, I can't even keep track of them anymore, Callan was only doing The Fighter and the Kid and being paid a wage by Brendan.
4 quarters. I'm the richest.
He didn't own a percentage in the show. Now, why was this? Obviously, Brian is a massive name in the podcast. He's half of The Fighter and the Kid. Surely he should be entitled to own some of this show. Well, that's not the case because everything changed when Brian was accused of rape. The LA Times reported that 4 women came forward accusing Brian of sexual assault. This wasn't helped by Brian talking about how aggressive he was with women, and clips like these resurfaced, painting Brian in a very, very bad light.
And then one time we like left. It was like a Tuesday at like, it was only like 7:30, and you were like, "Can I get a ride in my car?" And I was like, "Sure." And you got in the car, and I literally like turned the wheel like to like look where I was going, and I turned around and your dick was out. You do.
Are you serious? Dang, I didn't see that. Oh, first thing I was like, who is this lady? Whitney Cummings has messed up her face so much. Why didn't she stay like that? Whitney Cummings has messed up her face so much. I didn't even recognize her there. That's crazy. Dang. I'm not gonna lie. Schaub was jacked there. Oh, shit. He was jacked. Look at him. He's a big dude right there.
Do not hear no a lot.
Yeah.
I do know that.
Yeah.
Or you don't listen to it.
I don't listen to it.
You don't take it seriously. Yeah.
It's assault.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I think.
Like I remember being like, "Oh, I'm just gonna have sex with him because he's not gonna
Only
take
way
no
to
for
get
an
him
answer."
out.
I know. It's
Right.
like I'm just gonna do this to get like him to
But
go
you
away.
gotta
What? That's great. That was your thought, Whitney? Gee. Oh, man. Whitney is like...
Allegedly, as these accusations go, Brian was Weinsteining these women, promising stage time and money in exchange for sex. Now, it's important to note that to this day, nothing conclusive has really been found, but if you read the reports, it's pretty messed up if these are true. Brian responded to the accusations, saying he'd clear everything up, but never did. Instead, Brendan released a podcast with Josh Wolf. Brian then said he was going to take a leave of absence from The Fighter and the Kid, a bit of a strange flip-flop. Callan's name was also removed from the podcast information for a while, which obviously was a lie, kind of like how they lie about Brendan Schaub being a successful comedian. Brendan continued to try and release episodes without Brian, but obviously these received a ton of backlash. They ended up trying to create a Patreon and releasing episodes with Brian behind a paywall, which was a bit odd. Why not just bring Brian back on normally if that was the case? Well, it's because Cast Media, the company that was responsible...
Look, there's this thing, right? If you can't be on YouTube and do your show, why would you do your show? Like if you're doing videos, if you're posting your show, there is no better place to do a show or share your show than YouTube. YouTube gets so many stuff. So if you got to go to your own website and you got to hide behind a paywall and you can't, we already know you're a guilty motherfucker. We already know you done screwed up so bad that you got to hide on your own website behind a paywall. Like these, they're just saying they're guilty. People that do that are guilty as sin.
responsible for the fighter and the kid, and is a known scam company nowadays, claimed that they had no association with Bryan Callen, and they weren't aware of any plans of him returning. This probably explains why they couldn't do an emergency podcast explaining the allegations, because their agency dropped Bryan Callen right after. So these redacts thought they could release a podcast on Patreon and it wouldn't count, which is not how that works because the name is still the same. So in an attempt to skirt this, they created a new show called The Fighter and the Rinks. Obviously that didn't work. Being essentially blacklisted from Hollywood and podcasting, Bryan tried to do the right-wing grifter routine because that seemed to be the only group of people that would have him in. A guy who used to be friends with Joe Rogan being accused of rape. So Bryan cozied up to Steven Crowder, who apparently was so bad to work for, he would rather work with Brendan Schaub. And with clips like this surfacing, I can kind of see why.
Give me that milk. Give me that milk.
Nowadays, Callen seems to be distant.
Why would you do that? That's insane. Why would you? What was the idea there? I do not understand.
From the accusations. They haven't been disproven, but he isn't so directly associated with them. Even if he tried to sue one of the accusers and her husband, which he lost, so take with that what you will. He's even gotten the good graces of some ex-fans after doing podcasts with people like Matan, where after being made fun of to his face, he took it surprisingly well. From desperately hanging on to Schaub to arguably being able to do better without him is kind of crazy. Bryan was accused of and literally has more career prospects than Schaub. Wild. Bryan's been having some success in stand-up, even performing at Rogan's Mothership Club, which is more than Brendan Schaub can say. One thing after all of this that I really wanted to mention was that Brendan and Bryan were mad at the friends who abandoned them after Bryan was accused of assault. They would never do something like that. Right?
It drives me nuts that he's not up there with those guys. He's better than fucking 99% of them. And you want to outcast him over some bullshit? That's what I don't fuck with. That's what upsets me.
It's not like they did it to their close friend and alleged rapist Chris D'Elia. After D'Elia got accused of rape and grooming minors, Callen made this statement after he had just had eyelid surgery and what might be the most unserious address of allegations I have ever seen.
I'm just at a loss. I'm at a loss. And I'm praying that what I'm hearing isn't true. Maybe that's the best way to put it.
I can't talk.
It's just, it's like, it's a weird thing because I said to Brendan, I said, it's like, it's like watching someone die or something.
Now, Chris D'Elia was never really in the Roganverse per se. He was more adjacent. But I've been looking for an excuse to talk about this guy forever because he is such a comedy lolcow. It's kind of crazy that more people don't talk about him. Or maybe instead of a lolcow, a horror cow, depending on who you ask. D'Elia used to be one of the most beloved comedians in the whole scene because of his epic roasts and comebacks on social media. This was totally epic until people exposed him for being a groomer, rapist, and creep. But unlike Callen, there was a lot of concrete evidence to prove D'Elia had at least been acting inappropriately to people who were probably underage.
It's so annoying how dumb people are when people think something extra is going on in Hollywood. Oh, well, you know that there's...
Here's the thing, right? You hear that all these trust fund kids, you hear growing up, we make fun of them that they're spoiled and that they turn out bad. But you really start to see, if you look at all the shitty people in comedy, the people that screw people over, the people accused of all these underage things, the people that burn every bridge, they're horrible to their friends, they blow all their money, they keep fucking up, they never know when is when. It's always trust fund kids. Isn't it fun? I mean, you kind of think about it, but it really is true that they just don't learn how to navigate life. And it's crazy. It's crazy. How could you not navigate life when you're given so much money? It's insane.
There's a fucking a ring of pedophilia that people, oh, really, dude? Oh, there's a ring of pedophilia that the top producers know about and confide in each other in and keep kids and pass them around and fuck them? Oh, really, dude?
Of course, he denied it, but by this point, the damage was done. In his apology video, he claimed to have a sex addiction, then denied everything, so I don't know what the point of this video was. People were quick to point out that Chris D'Elia played a child molester on Workaholics back in the day, which is just poetic. But nobody cares about that, right?
Dude, Workaholics, when it first came out, bro, I used to watch it all the time. It was great. It was great. And their movies are actually really funny. Gosh, come back, Workaholics.
Is his comedy good? And the answer is fuck no. I watched his special, No Pain, and it is literally Brendan Schaub tier comedy. It might be even worse in some aspects. D'Elia, for some reason, does this fake accent like halfway through the special, and it just really bothers me. Like, yeah, I could see you being a rapist, bro.
When I got on the plane, I looked to see who had their Bluetooth on. Man, there were so many Bluetooths on.
D'Elia, he's such a character. There's so much to say about him. He bothers me so much. But he wasn't really directly associated with Rogan. It's just interesting to see that literally everyone in Rogan's orbit completely fell apart after he left LA. While D'Elia was never arrested or charged for or grooming, he received 2 punishments. The first one having his prank show being canceled. But the one that was much worse than that was being forced to do a podcast with Brendan Schaub that is somehow worse than The Fighter and the Kid. The Golden Hour, with Eric Griffin, who is so unremarkable. The fact that he is also on this podcast should tell you everything you need to know about him. What about a comedian who actually has comedy chops? I mean, most people who we've mentioned are terrible stand-up comics. Surely there's somebody with talent on this list, like Tom Segura. Tom Segura is one of the few Roganites that you could argue would have been just as famous if not for Joe Rogan. This is because Tom was actually super funny. He was a chubby dude telling relatable jokes and came across as an everyman that people loved. This was until he met Joe Rogan. You see, Tom Segura used to be fat, which is something he would admit to, but he started working out, eating better, and losing a shit ton of weight, which is honestly an incredible feat. And if you look at him now versus then, it's really night and day. He should be proud of himself for this, but around this time, fans started to notice a change in Tom's behavior. He was a bit more out of touch.
You know what? You only have what you have because of fans, so don't talk about us like that. Yeah, but you're still a loser if you're thinking.
That's the thing, right? Rogan ruins everything because Rogan can't have good people around him because it would expose him. And also, when you're around Rogan, Rogan has a lot of money. So if you try to keep up with the Joneses, you can't. You got to have a lot of money to keep up with the Joneses. If you have a little bit, you can't. So Tom Segura is trying. He's just trying to impress. But how much longer is this money train going to run for Tom Segura, you know? And he's nowhere near the amounts of money. Like, Joe Rogan is going to be a billionaire if he's not already. And you just can't compete with that.
Thinking like that.
Especially when talking about poor people for some reason. Using poor as an insult became a regular occurrence on the Tom Segura show. But this is not the comedy that made Tom famous. He was a relatable, everyday working dude. No one can relate to calling other people poor.
I have so much disdain come at me from people with little to no means, and it's just like a constant fucking barrage of just like, I'm so poor, I can't relate to anything you say, and I'm just like, okay, I don't know what to tell you.
It's, no pun intended, rich that he comes from a family of millionaires. Tom was more of a background guest on Rogan. He wasn't like Bert or Joey or Brendan, but the podcast was enough to blow up his star where he could create his own podcast studio, Your Mom's House, with his wife Christina, which was incredibly successful. And when it started out, people loved this, but as time went on, Tom just got worse and worse with how out of touch he was. Along with Bert and their podcast Two Bears, One Cave, they would create the worst archetype of stand-up comedian ever. The comedians who live the lifestyle of rappers. For a job that's all about relatability and being funny, there's nothing really funny about accidentally going to Vegas and buying a $75,000 watch.
Let me tell you, this is my.
I just don't get why you have to talk about it. I understand. For me, I got, like, in my 20s, I wanted to impress people. Into my 30s, it was getting a little less, and now, you look, people always make fun of my Hellraiser poster. And I got my little Buc-ee's plushie. You know why? Because Buc-ee's is the most magical place on earth. You go into a Buc-ee's, it's the most magical place on earth. And sometimes when I'm just feeling down, I hold that Buc-ee's plushie and I think about the good times. If you've ever had, hey, look, the banana pudding with the cookies. Oh, you can't get banana pudding anywhere else but in the South, you know. And then they got all the brisket. And when they're chopping the brisket, they yell it out. And then you could get you a Buc-ee's shirt, man. You know, and I don't care. I'm not a Disney adult. That's a step down. And I'm not really like, oh my God, Buc-ee's. But I brought it because I support Buc-ee's. And if a company, look, I'll also tell you a thing about a company. If you're a manager at Buc-ee's, $250,000. Or like 125, somewhere between there. Like general manager, you make a shitload. So they pay their employees well. They give them benefits. And they make all this magical food. Have you had the Buc-ee's hot potato chips? Like, they're like French fries, but potato chips. Oh, Lord. And then you got a wall of jerky and all the candy. My girlfriend loves like sour and sweet. The only thing I like is gummy bears. Outside of that, all the sweet, if I'm going to have candy, I want chocolate. I'm more about the salty food. Give me the pizza. Give me the steak. Give me the sandwiches, you know? But I just don't get why you always got to tell. Like, I spend a lot of money. I have some sunglasses all my glasses are very expensive. Because I think if I got to wear these things, I have green eyes. So my eyes need protection. So I'm spending a lot of money. This computer setup, if you could see it, is insanely expensive. But why do you always got to talk about it? Just like spend money on the things you want, but you don't have to be out there to impress them. Just spend good money on the things you really love. And then everything else, it doesn't matter. I'm not big on clothes. I just buy a pack of plain t-shirts most of the time, unless I get me a Buc-ee's t-shirt or a horror t-shirt. I got a bunch of horror t-shirts. I'm a big horror fan. But like clothes, who cares about clothes? Anyways, I'm just getting distracted now. Sorry.
Favorite story.
Yeah, that's another bullshit.
So I send Tom a text at this Rolex place in Vegas.
Story checks out.
And I text and I say a picture of the watch, and he goes, "Are you getting it?" And I said, "I don't think so.
I have trouble spending money.
I leave the place. I
said the guy from a Rolex store.
I leave the place. Well, I like looking at them.
Yeah.
So I leave the place.
It must be fun for the dealer.
Tom sends me a very heartfelt text. Hey man, you're busting your ass on the road. You work nonstop. You're gone 2 weeks at a time. You have 2 podcasts. It goes on in like this really heartfelt text. You deserve to treat yourself every now and then. This is an affordable treat. Do it for yourself. And so I go back, I buy the watch. Next day, I'm sitting and having coffee, looking at the watch going, God damn it, I love this fucking watch. I really love looking at it. It cheers me up. And I call Tom. I said, hey man, I appreciate you sending me that message. Leanne tried to convince me and I wouldn't do it, but your message meant so much to me. He's like, oh cool. I go, what are you doing? He goes, well, you know, I sent you that message and I realized that shit applies to me too. I'm at a Rolex store. I'm buying a new Rolex. Wow. He bought a new Rolex the next day.
Yeah. The worst of Tom's meltdowns would come when he lost his mind while at the airport. And to be honest, I totally understand why he got so mad. I mean, a gate agent at the airport said they were full and that he would have to check his bag. You know, the thing that happens like all the time on almost every flight. And calling this working class lady who's just trying to make a decent living a poor. This is not what a comedian sounds like. This is what a bitter, angry old man insulting people for not being as rich as him looks like. Hear that, dude working a night shift who listens to my podcast to get through the shitty job? You're just a poor, and you choose to be poor, unlike me, whose dad is a multimillionaire. But what's interesting from Tom, since the last video I talked about him, he seemed to listen to quite a lot of the criticism and has toned down this whole poor rapper Rolex wearing lifestyle a bit. Now the numbers at your mom's house are way down from what they were, and that could have something to do with it. I mean, having numbers go down is very humbling, and it's almost made Tom more listenable in a weird way. That might come across as contrarian, and it definitely is, but I think the best aspect in a comedian is relatability, and no one does that better than Theo Von. He took the opposite approach to Tom Segura, and is perhaps the most loved ex-member of the Joe Rogan verse. Theo made his fame off of stand-up comedy, TV appearances here and there, and other odd jobs. But it wasn't until he went on Rogan and then started his own podcast this past weekend where he would break through the stratosphere. Unlike Tom, Brendan, and Bert, who made their fame off acting like rappers and name-dropping celebrities constantly, Theo always presented himself as a down-to-earth normal dude. Theo did one of my favorite podcast series ever, where he'd interview normal working people, which was way more entertaining than watching Bert and Tom talk about how famous they are. Theo continued to have people on his podcast just to have conversations, whilst being open and vulnerable at the same time. Theo left.
Yeah, Theo, I think Theo is going to take over Joe Rogan soon. He's right on the edge, and I think he's going to take over Joe Rogan. It's really only a matter of time, you know? So we'll see. We will see. I hope so. You know, I think Theo, and I also think Theo could be a better comedian. He just needs to distance himself and believe in himself more and get away from the Rogan verse.
Left LA for Nashville, which was more his speed. But what would shoot Theo into the stratosphere, and I am not saying this in any joking way, I am being dead serious here, was when he left his podcast with Brendan Schaub and Chris D'Elia.
Yeah, and then I got some sad news. I'm going to be taking a step back from being on King and the Sting. Grateful to you, Brendan, man. Appreciate it.
You gotta handle some shit, brother.
For old times, I should have done this in the middle of the show, but for old times, do we maybe want to eat a hot chip?
I mean, I'm down.
I don't want that.
After Brendan said he had to figure some shit out, Theo went on to be by far the most successful one in the entire Roganverse, becoming friends with politicians, celebrities, athletes. He is a household name now, more than any of these other guys. His podcast numbers dwarf everyone else we've talked about here, and it's because Theo seems like a genuine guy. Now, there are a ton of other adjacent Joe Rogan members, like Eddie Bravo, who honestly is somewhat unremarkable, as he was never a comedian, but despite this was funnier than most of the other comedians on the show. To this day, he still goes on about conspiracy theories that fans love him for, even if they might have gotten
Dude, bro, give it up. This is the king of jiu-jitsu, Craig. Man, dude, did you see that tournament he put on? Oh, epic. This is one of my favorite people. You gotta love this guy. And first off, just to clarify, Eddie Bravo does actually, he's been touring. I don't know if he still did, but I think last year he was touring as a comedian, and he was doing it on his own. He was doing it on his own. Secondly, saying Eddie Bravo is unremarkable is kind of crazy, because Eddie Bravo, first off, he beat a Gracie in a tournament, submitted him. Second, he's basically revolutionized no-gi jiu-jitsu, and he's the creator of 10th Planet. He is one of the great jiu-jitsu minds that is out there trying to improve, add to, and make jiu-jitsu better. And check it out. He's kind of distanced himself from the Rogan sphere as well. You know? You can't say Eddie Bravo's unremarkable. Maybe he's unremarkable in the Joe Rogan comedy podcast world, but Eddie Bravo has made a name for himself on his own. He went out there and he trained jiu-jitsu, and then he went and I forget which Gracie it was. It might have been Hoyce or Hoyler. I think it was either Hoist or Hoyler. And he beat him. I think he beat him with a triangle choke. Which to get a Gracie, I think it was a triangle choke. I don't want to know, but still, to get a Gracie in that position, something that they basically were born into and did since they were born, is probably one of the greatest defeats in jiu-jitsu history. And look, Craig Jones is the motherfucking man. He is the master troll, and anybody that can put on a fight at the same time as one of the biggest jiu-jitsu competitions, the biggest grappling competitions in the world, and then to give away millions of dollars for fighter pay because, I'm not gonna give it to him. Craig Jones is the man. He is a master troll. Just go to his YouTube channel. It is incredible. Love it. Everything he does. Yeah, if I could be Craig Jones, I would. Plus, he's probably top 3 in the world, if not number 2. This guy will literally go to gyms to do seminars, and he will fight, spar, roll, whatever you want to say, with like 100 people and not lose. This guy is a legend. And the only thing standing in his way is Gordon Ryan. God, I can't stand Gordon Ryan. He's such a prick.
More insane somehow than they were like 10 years ago. And he's still running 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, which is one of the most respected jiu-jitsu schools in the entire world. And while he certainly got a boost from Rogan, he's been very successful in his lane that has nothing to do with comedy. There's also Ari Shaffir.
Okay.
Not even calling them. That's what I
Okay, sorry. He gave him credit there. I just don't think you should ever call Eddie Bravo unremarkable, because just in jiu-jitsu alone, he has left his mark. He's created 10th Planet. 10th Planet is almost like a religion in jiu-jitsu. I would love to go to 10th Planet, but I also enjoy gi because I'm more of a judo guy than a jiu-jitsu guy. And the gi is just, it may not be practical, but I'm not getting any street fights soon, and if you always train no gi too. So anyways.
In LA, people without even calling their friend because they're too busy getting plastic surgery was like, let me sell him out real quick.
What's important to say, we haven't spoken to Chris.
No.
Ever since all these guys left, Joe Rogan's kind of replaced them. In Austin, Joe's new crew of comedians have produced some of their own seriously funny highlights. But there's something a bit off here. When you watch these clips, you'll notice something. There's a weak link, and that weak link happens to be the host of the show. By surrounding himself with funny people, it's become blatantly obvious that Joe is not funny, like at all. He's not funny in a podcast setting, which you could say, to be fair, that was never the goal with the podcast, but he's not even funny in a stand-up setting anymore. He literally rips from Brendan Schaub, of all people, in his new special.
I wish I was gay. It looks way easier. My life would be so much easier if I was just gay as shit. You're hanging out with only guys? If I was locked down with the bros, Dallas? Quarantine with the homies? You know how much more fun we would have?
But if you're familiar with Rogan's comedy, you'd know it's never been good. Like, ever.
And by the way, when you see someone moving around like that on stage, I will bet you every penny I have they're not funny.
Stop her in the corner of the couch.
And somehow it's gotten worse in recent years. Brendan Schaub is at least funny in a way that we can laugh at him. Joe Rogan is just, ugh.
Anytime I saw someone miming having sex, pumping air, I would just go, not funny.
No.
It was just like...
That's probably one of the greatest call-outs of all time, and I don't think that guy will ever be on the show again. The thing you can't do to Joe Rogan is tell him he's unfunny, because he has created this insane bubble around him. And it's just like, that's like the excommunicado. They're like, you're no longer allowed in the hotel. Give us your coin. Get out of here.
Like it was a sign of like.
But what if there's a bit where you have to mime pumping air?
But who cares if he's not funny if the podcast is still good, right? That's what most people go to him for. His curious everyman takes and questions about the world, but most importantly, his willingness to talk to anybody. Unfortunately, Joe Rogan over the years has seemingly gotten more and more out of touch. Maybe that's because he has, quote, fuck you money. But it's inevitably led to a decline in quality of the show over the last few years.
Definitely hated in Canada right now.
Oh, yeah.
The hockey game. They were booing the national anthem so hard.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they get in 3 fights in the first 9 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we kick Canada's ass.
Carter sends it around. Marner waiting. Connor McDavid scores! Connor McDavid for Canada!
The more you lose touch with the average person, the more disliked they become. Celebrities are the exact same way. The most normal celebrities are usually the most liked ones, whereas the most out of touch ones are almost unanimously hated. It's not as pronounced as it is with comedians because in comedy or podcasting, half of the appeal is relatability. Not everyone can just quit their job and become an influencer, podcaster, comedian. Back in the day, I would consider myself a serious Joe Rogan fan, but now I can barely make it through an episode unless he has some really good guest on. Joe used to have such an appeal because he was just a curious dude who wanted to know more about the world. And what you'll remember is that's what Theo Von's podcast is now, and it is 10 times better than Joe Rogan's podcast. But now Joe Rogan is just a dude who wants his own political beliefs validated and will believe anything anybody ever tells him. Joe says it's stupid for Trump to beef with Canada. Oh wait, he talked to Trump, and now he says he would rather go to Russia than Canada.
I don't go to Canada anymore. I don't. No, nor should you. No, discipline. Yeah, I'd rather go to Russia. Yeah.
The stools of Canada.
It's just crazy. Here's the thing. A country's politics defines them and sets boundary, but you have to understand that there are people there. There are people, ordinary, everyday people that make up that country, and you shouldn't just dismiss a country because it doesn't completely believe in what you believe in. I think that's a dumb mindset.
Collectively breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe he's getting old, maybe he's just surrounded by yes men, and maybe it's because of that whole hit piece that the media did on him during COVID, which even I can say was total bullshit. Joe's podcast isn't bad now because he's an alt-right anti-vax Nazi who murders people for fun. It's bad because it's fucking boring. Joe has become a shell of his former self, and so has everybody who used to hang out with him. Maybe the golden age of Rogan and podcasting is over. To some of you, that's a sad thought. To others, it's thank God we never have to deal with that again.
Well, there you go. There you go. Is Joe Rogan's world collapsing? I think it's starting to. It may not be crashing totally into the dirt, but it certainly isn't what it used to be. And I think Rogan needs to figure out what's going on because he might not have much time left as the king of podcasting. And we certainly know that nobody believes in his comedy anymore. And if they do, they're probably pretty dumb. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Peace.